Hey there, welcome to the My Risk Advisor podcast. This podcast is for anyone in the financial planning ecosystem with a focus on life risk insurance. I'm your host, Phil Thompson, Director and Financial Advisor at Sky Wealth, and I've been on a business journey over the last few years going from a struggling holistic advice firm with one staff member, considering packing it all in, to pivot the business now to being one of Australia's leading specialist insurance advice firms with over 7 advisors, 30 team members, and helping hundreds of clients every single year get important insurance cover in place. I am unashamed to say that this podcast is so I can continue to grow and develop as an advisor and a business owner as I interview some incredibly smart individuals. So keep on listening so you can learn alongside me. All right, today I've got Jess Brady, who is a licensed financial advisor and does full-time money literacy programs. So thanks for joining me, Jess.
Thanks so much for having me, Phil.
So help me understand, what is your business today?
Yeah, so it's a few different things. Ultimately, what we do is we take all of the juicy good stuff that we give in a one-on-one advice sense around education and confidence, and we've developed some money programs to really make all of those insights more accessible and more affordable for people. So we have a 10-week money program because basically, Phil, what I realized in a lot of my one-on-one conversations was I was repeating education information, and that a lot of people actually just wanted to learn some of the real basic stuff and they wanted confidence that they were doing the right thing. And so what I thought was, if I can deliver this in a scalable way, I can make it more affordable and we can start helping some of those people that just really are never practically going to be able to afford advice. So that's the Greenhouse program. And then I've got what's called an Evergreen Money Club, which is a monthly low-cost solution that's on-demand masterclasses. So I interview a lot of experts so people can be part of that and come to a live masterclass every month or watch one of the on-demand ones we've got or come to one of our monthly money accountability circles. Because I think you and I know it's wonderful to learn, but doing is completely different. And so I wanted to have a way to make sure that, people kept their goals on track and people understood, as seasons and life changes, what they might need to think about, etc. So they're the two programs that I do. Beyond that, I do a lot of corporate financial well-being sessions. So I love going into companies and helping their staff understand more about money and the impact of not having a plan.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so now help me understand your journey. How did you get into advice? Why did you get into advice? And what's your journey to get you there?
Long and windy is my journey, if I could describe it briefly. So I started working at CBA when I was 18. I took a break from high school. Well, I finished high school, decided I wanted to take a break into the corporate world to build some cash before I went to uni. And then 12 months later, I started uni part-time. I was doing a double degree because I really actually enjoyed myself a lot more than I thought I would in a bank. And I was getting, promotions and kind of climbing a ladder that I didn't know existed. And so I ended up working at CBA for 5 years. And then I moved over to Macquarie, where I worked for 6 years. And then I was part of a merger and acquisition into Zurich. What I noticed, because I was mostly in the BDM or business development space in that time, was that a lot of my clients looked quite similar from a demographic perspective. And so, I really thought deeply about helping people that really looked and felt like me. I was really young when I got my first advisor, and he was fantastic. But I know for a lot of people that was really an intimidating barrier for them. So I partnered with a guy that I used to work with at Macquarie. We started Fox and Hare Financial Advice in the middle of the Royal Commission. Well done us, timing-wise. Everyone thought we were completely mad. And we kind of were. We were totally mad. I think you've got to be mad to run your own business anyway, but to think that you know what you're doing when you've never given advice before, when you've never run a business before, with no book of clients, it takes a special level of crazy to do that. Anyway, do what we did. And, very early on in that journey, I realized that we have a huge capacity problem and we actually couldn't handle the amount of people that wanted our help, which I realized is a really beautiful problem, but it's also a really stressful problem. And so I'd sort of thought long and hard about what are we going to do and how are we going to help all these people that we're turning away? And I just kept thinking, I'm having the same conversations about markets and investing and what's dollar cost averaging and understanding risk, assessing per goal. And I'm like, I just need to film this. And so, with Glenn's blessing, and it really was with Glenn's blessing, I did about an 18-month staged exit out of Fox and Hare. So I sold out of that in May of last year. I went and sort of eat, pray, loved my way around Europe, which was fun. Came back and did some work with Fox and Hare at the end of 2022. And then in Feb 2023, I launched the Greenhouse. So it is really that on-demand products. So yeah, look, it's been really interesting to be on, the corporate side, which has amazing resources, but obviously, challenges in terms of getting your ideas up and, you have to sort of follow the company line. And so I thought, I'll start this business and I'll have all this freedom. And then, you're very constrained by capacity. And so it's been really interesting to be on both sides. And there are definitely pros and cons of both. And now being sort of out of the traditional financial advice landscape, practically meaning that I'm not writing SOAs, everything that I'm doing is through general advice only. It's really meant that all of those people that we practically cannot service from a profitable lens have somewhere to go to learn from someone who's trusted, who's qualified, and who genuinely wants them to learn everything and not just piecemeal. Because I get really worried that people, they watch one TikTok and people watch one thing and then go and make a decision. And I'm like, no, you need something that's more holistic. Look at all the pieces of the puzzle. So it's really fun that I get to do that and to go into big companies and get people excited about money who've never been excited about money before.
I talk to a lot of BDMs who have a desire to get into advice. And I just keep saying, I've seen so many people in that corporate world. It's so hard to leave that paycheck because it's a sizable paycheck with sizable bonuses and to jump out. So it was great that, Glenn and yourself, took that leap of faith. What's your advice for people in that space who are kind of interested in maybe doing that or going down that path? What's your advice for them?
I think my advice is life is short. We always tell ourselves all the reasons why we shouldn't or couldn't or won't be able to do something. But ultimately, as far as I know, you only got one life. And, I say this as someone who has all those fears all the time, but, you have to become, and especially when you're working in corporate, I don't want to say it's cushy because it's not always cushy. Sometimes it's really hard, but there is a lot of support infrastructure. But if that's not really at your core, what you want to do with your life, I'm not sure it's worth looking back and going, great, I'm so glad I had a cushy job, unless that's what you want. And some people really want that, and that's fantastic. And if you're really great at it and you earn good money, amazing. Glenn and I worked on Fox and Hair for 3 years before we launched. We had no salary for 18 months. And, we put quite a bit of extra capital into the business to get it off its legs as well. So I think if you're going to do it and you're a BDM, you have a fountain of knowledge because your clients will probably be able to help you. And I wish I'd taken more help from them because I was arrogant and thought I didn't need it. But also, if you're going to be a financial advisor, you need to practice what you preach and make sure you've got resources available so you've got enough steam to get you where you need to be without running out of cash. Because I find that sometimes ironically happens in our world.
Yeah, and that's kind of the as you said, it's just a matter of making a sacrifice and just going what do I actually want? Do I want to work in corporate? Great, happy days. But if you're kind of always saying I want to be somewhere else, but not making the lifestyle sacrifices today to save up the cash and give yourself the buffer in life to be able to do it, then you're probably not going to be able to. And then you just got to accept it and just go, I'm accepting these life choices and I want my life to be a certain way.
There's no right or wrong, right? I think there's no right or wrong. I need people to know that because especially you feel, and you might feel the same, what you portray to the outside world isn't always a reflection of what's actually happening. I've never worked harder in my life. I wake up a lot thinking about all the different things. I have things everywhere. You go on holidays and you're not really on holidays. So I don't want people to be it will be easy. It won't be easy. It will be really hard. Probably one of the hardest things you do, but it's very rewarding too.
Yeah. It's when business owners post about I was able to, take my kids to school today because, I've got this work-life balance. It's well, then you're still working at 10:30 and not doing those emails that, which is great. You've got that flexibility, but it's not, sunshine and roses.
No, not always.
Yeah. So you took a brave move to get out of corporate and start your own business. And then you decided, look, things are comfortable. I don't like comfort. So you've taken another brave step to move out of an established business to start your own thing. So that journey, to get out of that business, what was that like? Help me understand what those conversations were like.
It was really hard and really fantastic all at the same time. So I don't know when exactly I identified this burning need, but it was early. It was really early. And Glenn, who, if you know Glenn, he's really structured and organized and pragmatic and logical, and I am probably none of those things, which is why we work really well together, to be honest. And I said to him, we need a low-cost, video-based, on-demand solution. And I'll never forget, he's just like, Jess, don't you think we should just do one thing well before we try to add in like a whole different model? And I was like, probably. And so he's like, let's wait 12 months and we'll pick this conversation up. And for me, 12 months is a long time. So I'm like, okay, so we get to the 12-month mark and I'm like, okay, it's been 12 months. Let's do this. And he's like, we are not ready. We've got to wait 12 more months. And I said to him, hey, yeah, but like I can't, like I'm an impatient human. I'm waiting very patiently. And, you know, as we were getting through that 12-month period, we just had really honest chats about like what I wanted from my life, what he wanted from his life, you know, the fact that it didn't look like in 12 months time we were able to do it. And so I was saying to him, like, what are we going to do? This is something that I literally like think of every night. And I'm just really scared that I'm losing motivation because I can see this huge problem that seems swelling and I feel like I'm not doing what I set out to do. And so by being really honest and vulnerable the entire way through meant that there wasn't this sort of knee-jerk reaction. It was really like very well articulated from both sides. When we started Fox and Hare, I said to Glenn, what's your vision? And he wants, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, you know, Glenn and I were talking about the fact that he doesn't really have any desire to leave that business. And I said to him from the very get-go, I don't think that'll be me. I'm pretty sure I will want to sell out. And so, you know, I think if you're going to go into a partnership, not having those conversations beforehand is really setting yourselves up for conflict probably. And the fact that we were able to have really raw, vulnerable, honest chats about could we build it inside Fox and Hare? Practically, how would that work? Legally, how would that work? How would my members not stop calling me? It was a lot of thinking about how we were going to apply it and do it. And then ultimately, it just got really complicated because they're extremely different business models and different service models. And when you've got a business that's growing at such a rapid rate, to try to throw in something completely different while you're still juggling all of the complexities of advice, we just decided this is not going to practically work. I handed over all of my members over like an 8-month period. You know, in my BDM time, I got to see quite a few mergers and I got to see quite a few demergers of partnerships. And I would say mostly they didn't end very well. But I'm really proud of how we did it. And I'm really proud, you know, I went hiking with him and the team in November last year after I'd sold out. So, you know, I think there's a lot to be said around being on the same page from the very beginning, being communicative. And, you know, it's like a marriage. So I had to sit and wait. And then I had to deliver news of like, I can't wait anymore. And there was, you know, really hard chats. But ultimately we said, you know, I'll never forget this. Dean Holmes, who is another business partner in the business, when we were starting to have some really, you know, important conversations about leaving, he came to a meeting and he's like, right, we ready to rumble? And I just looked at him and I said, I'm not here to rumble. We're not rumbling. I love Glenn and I need to make sure that everything that we do is done with love, because I am not leaving because I don't love the business. I'm not leaving because I don't love the team or the mission. I'm leaving because I have this quest that I need to go on. There will be so much love. And Dean, you know, we laugh about it. And Dean's like, I've never seen a demerger or an exit, really a sale that was done with so much compassion. And I think that's a testament to Glenn and I.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess the idea of ready to rumble, like I think being fearful of those difficult conversations, by the sounds of it, you guys are willing to have these difficult conversations very early and starting the partnership. Like, do you think there's any concerns for anyone else listening? Do you think there's any concerns starting a business with someone with their aim to, you know, be kicked out when they're 75 and someone with their aim to be, hey, this is a relatively short-term thing for me? Like, do you see that as a concern, or, hey, we've both got short-term goals to build this and so it can work?
I think it's all about like alignment in terms of what you're looking to do and where you're looking to take it. I think your skill set becomes really important because, you know, as I said, my skill set is quite different to Glenn's. And I think that's what a startup needs. It needs these sort of innovative ideas where I see boundaries and barriers and I'm just like, cool, how do we charge at them? Whereas, you know, naturally a lot of people are like, that's a barrier, that's a boundary, we stop here. And Glenn will openly say like, that's his style. He's not someone who wants to charge down barriers. And so, you know, I think for personality type, I was the perfect person to come in and get it off the ground for 5 years, but I also have ADHD. And so my brain's like, cool, done, next, what's new? I think if we hadn't had those conversations up front, Phil, would have been harder. I think if we didn't do regular check-ins, definitely would have been a lot harder. But ultimately, I come back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, if you feel like you need to do something, and I think we often over rationalize our business decisions because we're told we have to be really pragmatic. And I don't know about you, I've made so many mistakes in life, but I've made many, many mistakes in business. And I knew they were mistakes when I was making them. I don't call it gut, call it intuition, call it woo-woo. I wouldn't think I'm a particularly woo-woo person, but like the times where I didn't listen to that burning voice inside me going, this is not the right call, no matter how many spreadsheets and pros and con lists you got, they turned out to not be the right call. And I think, you got to trust yourself a bit more. And so if you feel like you're in a business that isn't going to be set up the way you need it to be for your life and your goals, or you feel like something's not right, then you kind of got to listen to that as well.
And the thing that I actually like the idea of going, hey, I'm going to be a short-term partner and I'm going to be a long-term, because it's just, I guess people just don't really understand themselves enough, and just being very honest with each other. Because when you're starting something, you're like, I want to kind of start a business with this person. I want to kind of impress them because, well, it may not start, So if I'm saying I'm going to be here for 5 years, then they may not want to start the business with me. So there's these concerns about, these things, and also the recognition that life is short and things will change. Like if you've got a desire to be in the business forever, but at the end of the day, life can change. You may make a change in decision, and just being upfront and honest that hey, this is where I stand today, but maybe I change my mind in the future is super important.
And I think not blindsiding someone. So if you are feeling like that and you're internally working around, what that means and what you might be doing, etc., and you don't tell anyone until the very end point, I think that partner feels really left out along that journey. And, maybe I shouldn't have told Glenn the whole way through how I was feeling, but I think it really served both of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask, what's your advice for a business partner who's in a business and they may want to get out? But I think, as you said, just have that conversation early.
Have it early. We had a buy-sell agreement. We did what we would tell our clients to do. So that took all of the commercials off the table. Like there wasn't any conflict about what the business was worth. We'd already figured that out when we started the business. So that really helps. If you don't have a buy-sell agreement or you don't have some form of structure around the valuation methodology of the business, you're setting yourself up for conflict. So I would say that is a really important starting place. And figure out like, how do you, and I don't know, like the different directors, the partners, whatever the model might be, have really clear conversations around, honestly where you're at and what you're feeling. Because as you say, you might be like, I've come on as partner, I've taken equity and I'm going to be here forever. I'm going to live and breathe this until I die. And something happens and you're like, actually, this is not my plan anymore. It's okay. That's totally okay. I said to Glenn years ago, and I reminded him when we had dinner a few months ago, I'm like, Glenn, our next business is in death. I've thought it for years. I think the next business that we'll go into is in death. And he's like, shut up. He's always said, shut up. I'm like, it's a booming. I think it's done very, very differently in how we do it. If you've been through having to, mourn a loved one and that whole process, I think it's ripe for disruption. Anyway, so, I think that is a testament to our friendship and, the fact that I joke about it, sort of. I mean, I don't have any plans to set up a death business anytime soon, but,
maybe the next one.
That's what you want. Like, you don't want to, our world is so small. You don't want to be at conferences running away from someone because you didn't work out. Like, we are big people. We hold big space for uncomfortable chats for our clients, really raw, uncomfortable chats. It's what we're really great at. We got to do it ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I talk, that's kind of the thing I talk most to my team about is like, you've got to be good at having these difficult conversations, like, and just be not afraid to have and with grace. Like I talk about like, have grace for one another. Like, people are allowed to make mistakes, but don't be afraid to have a conversation about if people aren't doing the right thing or if they're missing the expectation, just because they may not be clear. And so, I think just having really honest conversations, that's where I see probably, we at Sky, it's kind of, I'm the only business owner. I don't have a business partner. So I still have the conflicts with the business partners, with myself, what should we do? What should we not do? But it's a bit easier because I can kind of change my mind when I need to.
But it's also harder because you don't have someone saying that is a really stupid idea, because sometimes depending on the culture of a business, someone isn't comfortable saying that. And I guess that's around creating psychological safety. But I'm always saying, so I've got a small team now. Glenn would often be like, that is a dumb idea, or like, we don't have got time for that, Jess, or you're trying to derail our plans, which I specialize. And so I say to my team, like, is this a dumb idea? Please, God, tell me if this is stupid. Because when you're alone and you're making a lot of decisions, it can be really lonely, and it can be really hard to have someone poke holes. And so I think if you don't have other directors, that's okay. I think, how do you empower your team so that they can look at something and go, that's not okay, or that's a stupid idea, or have you thought about this? And I love that. And frankly, I think we all need that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had an all-team meeting where we have like anonymous questions. I sat there for like an hour and a half answering these questions. And one of the questions was like, what personality or attitude, makes for a good leader in the business? And I just said, everyone who's kind of a leader in this business, basically their number one trait that I like is that they call me an idiot, and they'll call me out. And so it's like, and there's one leader in the business that's like, you could probably do it better. If I'm honest, you could probably pull me up more. But like, that's kind of, and I just said that to the whole team. I said, like, they're the people I want to surround myself with, the people who are just like, no, that's wrong. Like that, I did totally disagree with that for these reasons. And it's like, and then I go away for 2, and I'm like, I argue back and say, no, I'm right. And then I go away for 2 days, and then I come back and apologize and say, actually, no, you were right. I was wrong. And let's move forward with whatever you told me. Now, for someone who's, been around advice for a long time, and now you're still, advice adjacent and still a qualified advisor. If you were starting a traditional financial advice business today, starting from scratch, what would that look like?
What would it look like, or how would I do it differently?
Would it be exactly like Fox and Hare, without saying that Fox and Hare are not doing it well?
Fox and Hare was my idea. Yeah. So obviously I think it's good, Phil. I bailed Glenn up in a road trip back from Orange in New South Wales, and if you know where that is, to Sydney, like, that's a long time to basically wear someone down to be like, fine, we will do this thing. Yeah. Look, for me, definitely, I'm 35. I wouldn't try to target a market that I don't understand well enough. And so for me, it would, if I was doing that, which I don't plan on doing, but I would do it to a demographic that I feel I'm at a similar life stage to. I really hoped that technology would have come further in our world so that we can deliver advice faster and more affordably, and in a way that's more client-centric. I hold great hope for the profession, and I really genuinely hope that we can get to a point where advice is not just for the elite. And I think we have to be really honest and say that right now, based on how much it costs to get good quality ongoing advice, it is really for a very privileged few. And I would love to see a world where that's not the case, and that everyone has a financial coach or a financial advisor or is part of a money program. There is more opportunity than we can handle, frankly. Like, we would be so screwed if everyone tried to get advice from us right now. It would be a wonderful problem, but it would be a sincere problem for us as a profession to think about. And so, as people are getting older, as people are starting to inherit money and deal with the complexities of estate planning and aged care, etc., there is going to be a big need. I believe that there's so much opportunity for our profession. I genuinely believe that. I would do niching like we did with Fox and Hare. That was really successful for us. I would want to bring tech in far more than we were able to. We tried a lot of tech, and frankly, a lot of what it says on the box is not, annoyingly, what's in
Yeah.
And I think I know a lot more about my style in terms of how I approach, really coaching based rather than, more of the formal arrangement where you see them once a year and you don't do cash flow. Like, I'm very goals based. And so I would want to keep all of that stuff. So the answer to your question is probably really similar to what I did.
That's a good answer. I wasn't, the intention wasn't to be like, what's bad. It was more about like, 5 years ago when you build a business and design a business, we're a long way away from that today. And have things changed in the industry? And that was kind of the purpose of the question is based on the changes that you're seeing and the future that you see for a more traditional advice firm. is there any tweaks or differences?
Yeah, I mean, the industry is always evolving. I think we're busily evolving in ways that aren't really helpful to the consumer. I think we have had to deal with so much regulatory BS and compliance BS, and I get why we had to have it. I totally understand it, and I do believe that we should have good quality advice being produced by advisors. But I think the burden of having to, do all of that to evolve, from a technological perspective, a lot of businesses were not tech ready in 2020, and that in itself was a huge evolution for them. I think honestly, people, what I've noticed in the profession is, because we've been dealing with all of this stuff, which isn't necessarily enriching client strategies or client relationships, we haven't had enough space to innovate the client experience. And so what I'm really hoping is that over the coming years, we're going to find ways to deliver things better to end consumers where they actually feel it. And practically, hopefully what that means is less time on things that are not value add and do not create better quality advice documents. I'm excited by that. I think there's huge opportunity to revolutionize it. But I also acknowledge people are tired. People have been through a lot, and I think it's okay to call that out too.
Yeah. So now moving on to the current business. Now, this is a real softball, easy answer. Is the business a friend of advisors or a foe?
Like lover, like good friend, very good friend. It's so interesting because I got some PR when I launched that was completely different to PR that I thought I was getting. I thought I was making some commentary on the quality of advice report, which I'd read and done lots of thoughts on. But instead it was sort of around me leaving, I'm doing little inverted brackets here, leaving the industry. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm still licensed and it's still important for me to be here. So no, I very much believe this is complementary. My job is to make more people educated so that they can get to a point where they need financial advice. I have referred 3 people from my programs to financial advisors for full advice already. And so I think that that's wonderful that in the space of less than a year, someone's come in, they've learned a lot, they've started shifting their money beliefs, they've started putting money together for the very first time for some of them. And they're like, cool, I'm ready to level up now. And I'm like, yes, let's go find you a home so that you can take this to the next level. So I want to grow the market, and I believe it can be really complementary.
Yeah, and I think hopefully we're moving out of this kind of, combative environment that we're, now that I do feel like a lot of advisors, they are kind of like got more clients than they can adequately serve. And so, going, well, there are, content creators who are in this space. There are, money coaches in this space. There are people doing financial literacy programs in this space. I've seen more consumers talk about getting financial advice in the current day than I have in a long time. And so I think ASIC kind of reiterating, what are the legal requirements, to content creators, back, a year and a half ago, whenever it was, helped a lot of consumers go, well, I know I'm just gaining information here. And then when I'm ready to level up, I'm then going to get financial advice. And I haven't seen that kind of consumer behavior, in the 10, 12 years I've been in advice. So I think you are a friend, obviously, and I think it's great what you're doing, and it's exactly, they're the best clients when it comes to advice. The ones that are engaged, the ones that are thoughtful about their money decisions, they're by far the best clients.
Definitely, and what I hope is that they come not as green as some of the other people do, and therefore not afraid to ask questions or to be honest when they don't understand something, and not just let their partner talk in the meeting and sit there quietly and not get it. I think that there's so much benefit. And look, so a number of financial advisors refer people to me, people that aren't necessarily the right fit for their business, or they don't have the right amount of assets or income or whatever it might be to work with them in a traditional sense. And, one of the advisors who referred to me only a little while ago, she and I caught up, and she said, Jess, what's so great is that in the past, I felt so much guilt sending them away because I really knew that they needed help. And so I would take them on, even though they weren't my ideal client. They didn't fit sort of the business strategy, but I just felt bad that I didn't know where else to send them, where they would have, trusted, experienced information. And she's like, and the problem is those clients that I knew were not my ideal fit were always the most work. She's like, you are doing me such a big favor in a way, because you're helping me stay aligned to what my business mission is and relieving the guilt. And I'm like, that's amazing for everyone.
Yeah, and I think that's where what I'm seeing, and maybe it's confirmation bias because that's kind of the space I'm in. We service a specific client, so we're working with a lot of other advisors servicing that need. But that's the conversations I'm having a lot. Is like advisors, we're in this job because we want to help people. That's kind of like the main reason anyone gets into advice is because they want to help people with their financial decisions, and then a lot of advice firms are moving upscale and increasing their fees and becoming like incredibly expensive, and not because any advisors out there being greedy or wanting to charge that. It's just the cost of doing business in advice. And so when there are service offerings that may fit their prospects, or their leads that are coming to them, and they can just comfortably hand them over and refer them out to a trusted source, that's where I think the whole industry is growing up and going, hey, you're not the right fit for me, but I've invested in these other business partners and no formal relationship, but we know we can send them to you because we've had 10 other clients have a great experience over there. So, and that's what we're seeing a lot is people in advice, they're so much more willing to refer out than they ever have before.
I just think, imagine if we could create a world where financial well-being is a profession and it's far more diverse than just financial advisors. And I say just financial advisors with the deepest level of respect, not to discredit what financial advisors do, but financial advisors can then become like the specialists of that financial well-being world. And so, I believe that there is a huge, particularly at the moment, like a huge need for our services and our offers to be more diverse than they are today. And I think the regulatory stuff is obviously a hindrance really to that. But I can see a world where financial well-being, financial coaching, financial literacy going to be for the masses. And I can see that the need for quality financial advice in those really specialized areas, or for the one-on-one stuff that's complex, for people who can afford it, is fantastic. And I think we all want to grow the market. We've been talking about growing the financial advice sector for how long, Phil?
Yeah.
And we haven't. Like, let's be really honest. I know we're all working really hard. We actually, if we step way back, I don't think we have. And we have a lot of financial advisors who are a lot older. It's like, it's actually a really big worry if we don't get really strategic about what the profession is going to look like in the next 20 years. When opportunity is rife, I think we're missing a massive piece of the pie.
And look, I think it's also a lot of financial advice licensees and firms, the ones that are really honest, I believe, don't actually care about growing the pie. Like, anyway, here's a hot take. I actually don't think they necessarily care about growing the pie, because we actually don't, as advice firms, individual firms, we don't need 20,000, 50,000, 100,000. So growing the pie is not really in my best interest for a lot of advice firms. But I think we all understand that we want more people to get advice because inherently we are wanting to help people. We want, when we believe that advice can help people. I really don't think a lot of advice firms want to grow the pie.
I agree with you. I don't think a lot of advice firms want to have an unmanageable amount of clients on their books. That creates a whole lot of risk, and I totally understand that. But again, like, it is this conundrum, right? Because we also inherently want to help people, and we know that we're not helping very many people. So it's like, I guess the question is, like, do you want to? And only you can answer that at an individual level. And it's totally fine if you, I capped out at my client base and I was like, cool, what do I do here? Do I just stay at the number of people that I have? Or does that not feel right for me? And for most people, it feels really right for them and they can keep going and really deepen and strengthen the relationships. But for me, that wasn't the case. And so I believe money is a core pillar of wellness and well-being in Australia for people. And I believe, frankly, that, we should learn far more about it in our education system. And we have a lot of people in Australia today who are feeling really overwhelmed about money. It's impacting their marriages, their mental health, their physical health. And so I passionately believe more people need to learn about it. And that's why I believe there can be this sort of whole, not adjacent industry, but I believe that the profession can be quite broad because then advisors can stay really niche and narrow in terms of their client base, but we still can help more people. And that's what I like to do. And other people totally don't resonate with that. That's fine.
And what I mean, just to flesh that out, I don't mean that advisors aren't passionate about helping people or helping a lot of people. I think they are, but if you're running a financial advice business, you've got to be very honest with what's right for our business and our clients, and it's not 10,000 clients. And that's why for me in my business, I moved to a more volume-based business because I wanted to help a lot more people. And the only way we could do that is insurance only. And the way we think about it is we want to help people make really informed decisions about a really important financial product, and at a low, and so that's why I moved into that space, and doing insurance only helped facilitate that, because my view is holistic advice is inherently unscalable. It's very, very difficult. So I think it's only once I've ever heard a licensee be very, very forward and say, look, let's be honest, we, overall want to grow the pie, but in every individual businesses, there's no incentive to. The incentive is to build a good business for yourself. That's 1,000 clients. That could be 500. That could be 200. And so that's why I'm so positive towards what you're doing, because that it is incredibly important. But advisors running advice firms cannot do that because it's just misaligned with their business goals, and that's okay. Next question: what's the plan to growing the business? Like, how are you going to reach 20,000, 100,000 people?
Oh, 100,000, Phil. God, that scares me a lot when you say those numbers. So a couple of ways. The fact that financial advisors don't see me as an enemy has been really fantastic. And I have so many wonderful advice businesses who have reached out and they're like, we love what you're doing. We have lots of people that come to us and they're just not a great fit. Can we work together? Or maybe there's actually a few in the city where they want their children and they've sent some of their clients' children to us because they're scared. They're scared that their kids are going to end up with quite a bucket load of money and have no sort of foundational elements. So definitely working with traditional referral partners, that's been amazing for my business. We've had lots and lots of financial wellbeing sessions inside companies. And so that has created an amazing opportunity for me to, get people to know, like, and trust me before, people need to work with me, which is awesome. All the usual stuff. We do social media. We look at a lot of ways of how do we own our platform. So, if you look at what's going on in the social media space, the challenge and the kind of risk is that at any time they can change their algorithm, they can change their rule set, they can change who owns it and what's it called and all the rest of it. And you're at their mercy. And so we're really trying to build a beautiful, thriving community on our own platform, and we want to be the source of truth. So we don't have a Facebook group. We run it through a different tech platform where ultimately we don't own the tech, but we have a lot more control over how that works. I want people to get to know me and be able to see that I'm sort of the source that they can come to for money insights. And so one of the things that I do, I was only talking about this last night with my coach, is I do a weekly money dilemma. And I didn't know if that would be like a good idea or a shit idea. And I didn't know if it would have any sort of weight. But to get the answer to my money dilemma, you got to sign up to my newsletter. And I was like, is that a trick or is that like bad? And then the more I've been learning about it, and I got my Meta account hacked a few months ago, which was fun, let me tell you. It really complicated for me. Like, I have to own my platform because I had someone hack my account at 1:30 in the morning. Yes, I had two-factor authentication on Facebook. Still can't tell me how that happened. Did a whole heap of crazy stuff, spent a whole heap of money on the credit card that was listed on the business ads account, did a whole heap of terrible things. And it was like this massive wake-up call that like social media is awesome for brand building and awareness, etc. But at some point you got to get them off social media and into your ecosystem because there's just too much risk. These people are smarter than ever before. So my money dilemma, which is a weekly thing, my biggest problem at the moment, Phil, is I feel really bad. I've got like pages of people's money dilemmas and I'm like, God, I only tackle one a week. These poor people are going to be waiting forever. But what a beautiful situation. I went from not knowing whether anyone would care. I have between a 30 to 40% open rate week in, week out. Last Friday was 36%. I looked at it last night. By all measures, that's a really good open rate. We have a click rate of like 15%. So I'm trying to really understand, like, how do I answer questions for people, build community, build trust, and communicate with them authentically. My style is not for everyone, and I'm totally okay with that, because I want people to resonate with me, because there are plenty of other great people out there. If I'm not your gal, that's fine. Go and find someone who feels like a good fit for you. So, we get a lot of conversion from our list, and we've grown it really successfully by doing free downloads and checklists and ethical investment, sheets, etc. So I don't think it needs to be really hard. It's just really different to the stuff I was doing in one-on-one advice.
Yeah. And, I spoke to a holistic advisor the other day who we work with, and they've actually built into their service offering a money coach into their service offering. I think it's like 3 a year sessions with a money coach that they, I don't know the financial arrangements exactly. I think they pay for that and build it into their service offering. But I think it's a no-brainer. Like, you think about advice firms, it costs to serve a client and to sit and do a goals meeting with them is really kind of inefficient. Like, it's really expensive to run an advice, like a traditional advice firm. So I think if there's any like holistic advice firm, or any advice firm really should be working out how do we partner, with you or people in that space to fill this need for our clients. And again, I think that's more advice firms are looking at how do we fill the gaps that we have, because we don't want to do it. Previously, we did it. We promoted it. We said we're amazing at it, but now we're no longer fulfilling that need because the cost of service is too much. So I think that's a great way for advice firms to partner with yourself and people like you.
And you know what else I think is good about it? Obviously, I'm biased, but because the style that we do it in is very much like, I'm going to teach you how to fish, you get these people who go from really fearful to much more empowered and much more confident. And so, I spend weeks in the program getting them to rewrite money beliefs, money behaviors, getting to build their values, getting them to look at their goals. And they end the program knowing that they've come a long way. They also realize that they've got a long way to go. It's that really interesting thing where the more they learn, the more they realize they need to learn. But there is this sense of like, I can go and do this. And I think that makes then going to see a financial advisor much less scary. And to your point, they've probably done a lot of really great foundational work themselves, which is labor intensive. Like, I would sit there for hours while people were basically going through a fake sort of therapy session with me, because they were undoing and unpicking years worth of bad behavior and then relating it to something probably traumatic in their childhood that they hadn't dealt with yet. And so, for me, I was like, whoa, this is intense. And I went and did a course on how to handle that, because Glenn and I were like, oh my God, we don't know what to do with this. We're only financial advisors. We're not therapists. It's really hard to run that profitably because a lot of time.
Yeah. So, one question I've got, why be a qualified advisor still?
Yeah. Every time Craig from Paragon calls me or sends me an email, I always tell him I get worried that every time he's going to be like, you're out. You're out. He's like, would you stop panicking? I always answer and I'm like, oh no, is it bad?
What did I do?
Stop. Would you stop every time? And I understand I'm a bit of a maverick. I think I'm the only licensed financial advisor in Australia doing a fully comprehensive financial literacy program. And I don't know about you, but like in our world, standing out in that sort of way is not always a good thing. It was scary. I had to get a legal firm to sign off on all my scripts. I had to use a film production company that had teleprompters so that I didn't go off piste and do whatever. So like it came with a lot more complexity and it came with a lot more cost. Ultimately, I think there's built-in trust and credibility. I wanted to stay really close to the industry and my sort of journey. I am, from a career perspective, still relatively young. And so I know that the world is dynamic and moving, and I didn't want to close myself off to pivots and changes as I felt were needed for the business as well. It's certainly not in my plan yet to do anything in that space, but I also don't know what will be around in the next few years. And I wanted to stay really close and I think also showing that I'm not anti-advisors and that I want to create that sort of ecosystem. I have a non-practicing CFP in my team as well. We talk about it a lot. Like, this is a huge burden and cost for our business. I get my remuneration reports from the team at my licensee And obviously it's zero because I'm not writing SOAs or doing ROAs. And I'm like, God, we pay a lot of money for things that we're not using. And at the moment, it's still the strategy. Will it be the strategy forever? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're the only one because everyone else who had done it decided to not be an advisor anymore.
Yeah.
It's
It's a big call.
Yeah, it's one of these things. Are you the smart one or are you the dumb one? Who knows? Time will tell.
I mean, I think we all know the answer. It's probably the latter, to be honest.
Look. To be honest, I've said in the past that other people in that situation get rid of your license. I think I said it to you as well. But I think with the QAR and the changes that are happening, it may be worth, like as you said, like we don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's possibly worth staying in that licensing arrangement. But it's a huge commitment, huge investment that, obviously, because you're paying the bills.
Yeah, I do. And also, like, I think for your license, there's a reality that, like, when you're the squeaky wheel, they have to think about that as well. And so that does scare me because I realize I don't fit this model because the model's not designed for this world. So that, keeps me up at night as well.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, I could talk for 3.5 hours with you, Jess, but out of the interest of anyone who's listening, I'm going to end with 2 questions. When do you get a chance to do your emails?
Not very often. I have an EA who does my emails. He's been on personal leave, in and out of personal leave the last little while. So that's been a real challenge. But I try to do emails in between meetings.
Yeah.
Morning, nights, whenever I can. But my email is a jungle. I think that's how I would describe my inbox. I'm sorry if you've emailed me and I haven't replied to you. It's sitting there patiently waiting. No,
I don't know what the reason I ask everyone is because it's something that I struggle with. I'm finally at a good point today whereby my email inbox is relatively clean. I think I got 5 emails in my inbox, but it's rarely been like that in the last 3 years.
Yeah, you just have a lot of stuff to get through. And I think we have a culture where people just expect an email straight away. And I've had to learn that emails are not their be all and end all because I would do them instead of projects. And I'm like, no, the project, no one else is doing the project. If you don't do the project, babe, project's not getting done. So that's also a really hard thing to switch off from those sort of bombardments as well.
Yeah. And the last question, what's one interesting hobby that you have?
Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Phil, I don't have interesting hobbies. I love to read. That is not interesting and possibly not a hobby either. So on both accounts, I probably get striked off. I have a really intense dog. I feel like I talk about her in every podcast. And I say that because between the business and my dog and like just basic human survival things like going to eat, cooking, groceries, whatever, I feel like I don't really have hobbies. But I'm going to get hobbies. That's my goal for 2024. I had a couple of goals for hobby-related things this year that just haven't eventuated. And so I have some plans for building it up.
All right. What's your planned 2024 hobby I can keep you accountable to?
So I'm going to start my Spanish lessons again. So I was doing Spanish lessons, and please don't ask me to say anything because that's how well it went. And also I want to do a short course in ceramics.
Yeah, cool. Like pottery.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing or is that different?
Oh, who knows? I haven't started it yet.
But my wife did pottery. Yeah. She loved it. Yeah.
Great. That's what I want to do. And there's one down the road, so shame on me. Should have done it already.
Perfect. There you go. There's your 2024 hobby. Actually, it could be late 23. What are we talking about? We're not finished the year yet.
Oh, I have so much to get done between now and Christmas.
Oh, please. You can spend an hour on a Thursday night at 7 p.m.
You're right.
I'm giving you this. I'm too busy.
Yes, you're right. Okay, that's my goal. I need to go and look at that.
Yeah. Lock it in. Send me a message when it's done, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for being accountable. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks heaps for your time. Now, how do people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
I mean, we live in a modern world. There are many ways. Yeah, email if you're willing to be patient. I'm on LinkedIn, Jessica Brady on LinkedIn. You can Insta me if you happen to be on Instagram, Jess Brady _financial advice. Otherwise, it is jessicabrady.com.au or just email the team, hello@jessicabrady.com.au. They're pretty responsive.
Awesome. Thanks heaps for your time.
Thanks for having me.
If you've enjoyed this episode and you think someone else will get value out of it, I'd love it if you could forward it on to them. And as always, we can continue the conversation in the My Risk Advisor Facebook group. All you need to do, open up Facebook and search My Risk Advisor, and I'll see you in there.